Great. Good afternoon, everyone who's joining us live, and welcome to our Coaching, Confidence and Career event with the CWT partnership. So for anyone who's not aware, CWT is Connecting Women in Technology, and the partnership has actually been in existence a few years now. But we've been through a bit of a revamp recently, and if you were able to see our opening event on Monday or listen to the recording, you'll hear all about our updated mission and the plans for this year. But typically this event runs in person, but unfortunately we couldn't do that this year, but instead we've been able to offer a number of virtual events across 4 days, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Gemma Brown and Nicola Parker from She Rises to deliver this session. So just to let you know, we are going to be recording the session today, so if you aren't comfortable with that, please log out and look for the replay at a later time. But you are off camera and you're on mute as well. So if you want to engage with us, which we do encourage, please use the chat feature on the right hand side of your screen. And if you have a question, please post it in the Ask a Question menu at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring both of these throughout the session, and we'll also take time to answer questions live throughout or at the end, just with time dependent. You'll also see a poll running at one point through the presentations, so look out for that pop up, and we encourage you to vote and get involved. And there's also a call to action or a green button at the bottom of your screen directing you to the She Rises website if you want to explore a little bit more about that organisation. So from me as the facilitator today, I just wish you all enjoyment and engagement for the session ahead. And you'll see me pop in and out if there's any technical problems, hopefully not, if there's any support required, and if not, you'll just see me at the end to close the session out. So with that, I'd like to formally hand over to Gemma and Nicola. As I say, they're both coaches who empower women through individual and group coaching with a focus on building confidence and support through career change. So with that, over to you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was a great introduction. Hi, everybody. It is wonderful to be here today. We're really excited to be joining you, Connecting Women in Technology event. We've got a lot to cram into this hour. We'll be giving you a taster on those 3 elements of coaching, confidence, and your career. So we will be going at a pace. As Jen said, there is a button for submitting any questions. If you've got a question about anything we talk about today, please do submit or use the chat. We'll be coming to the questions at the end of this session, and if we don't have time, because we are tight on time, we will continue to answer those questions after the session has ended. You're also very welcome to get in touch with us on email or via LinkedIn. So as I said, we've got a short intro to coaching, confidence and your career today. And at She Rises, these are key areas that we cover in both the one-to-one and group coaching programs. It's also about connection and making connections to build our networks, share experience and empower each other. So it's quite timely. Today it's also about connection. And if we were face-to-face, which we love to be, we would be having a more informal way of connecting with each other and having those introductions over a coffee or just saying hello and where have you come from, how have you got here kind of thing. So you've heard a little bit about us today, and I'd love to hear from you. So I invite you just to introduce yourself briefly in the chat, copying your name, your company, and where in the world that you are, so that we can try and replicate some informal way of connecting with each other. And while you're doing that, I'd like to highlight this intention around connection and connecting. And really encourage you today to, if you do see somebody who says something on the chat or who you've come across before, perhaps you've got something in common, maybe in the same area or the same country, or something they say resonates, then try and reach out to them. If you're happy to share your email in the chat, that would be amazing too, so others can connect with you. And it'd be great just to see who's here today. Perhaps you'd like to connect with each other after this session and follow up with somebody about what the most useful thing has been for you today. So we've got Nikki. Hi, Nikki, digital marketing manager, brilliant, based in the UK. Hopefully you're enjoying some of this wonderful heat wave. It's about 28 degrees here in Cambridge today. So I hope you've got your fans on the desk. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Beth. Lovely to meet you. Hi, Nina as well. So really nice to have so many of you here today. It's really lovely to welcome you. I'm going to hand over to Nicola for a bit more of an introduction now, but do keep those introductions coming through the chat. And as I said, do connect with each other if you can. Nicola.
Thanks, Gemma. And lovely to see some names in there that I met when I spoke at a Connecting Women and Tech event back in November 19. So lovely to see you again. Thanks to Connecting Women in Tech, and particular Avaya for inviting us along today. As I just said, I spoke at a Connecting Women and Tech event in November 19, and we ran a workshop on coaching and leadership. And that's because a coaching leadership style, research shows, is the most effective for developing people. And I ran that with a fellow coach, Tammy, and we absolutely loved working with you all. And you got us thinking about how we could work together a bit more, empowering women through connection and coaching. And so in autumn last year, we created She Rises, and really on the back of the fact that we were really angry that all the research and the stats and the data that was coming out at the time was that women were disproportionately impacted by COVID. And actually at the time, globally, women were more likely to be made redundant. But we were losing women from the workplace also because of the care burden. Schools had been out for months, nurseries had been shut, and just simply working and managing that care had become untenable for many. So we created She Rises as group coaching programs at the beginning to support women who were facing redundancy. And it was because the Fawcett Society that campaigns for gender equality in the UK was really saying that the COVID crisis was really threatening our journey to gender equality. So it was a bit of a crossroads moment. And we've got to remember that that is against an existing backdrop of a gender pay gap in the UK of 17.3%. And I know we've got people globally in here as well, so those data will differ a bit from where you're in. It's still the case that more women are on furlough in the UK, so there's concern about what's going to happen in autumn when that furlough scheme finishes. There's the little green shoots of some more positive data coming out in the labour market at the moment. So anyway, She Rises, we started group coaching programs to support women facing redundancy last autumn. And it was bringing women together who were facing a similar challenge at the same time, and helping them see what next might look like, and in order to get there as well. Now, at the end of the programme, many of the women were saying to us that it really helped them, but actually sometimes that internal voice in the head had actually been the biggest barrier for them moving forward, their inner voice. We also did a little bit more research, and Gemma's going to talk about this later on, that was showing that there's a gender gap as well in how we evaluate our performance. So with Gemma, we created a building confidence program, a group coaching program, because it is often, many of us, and we see this in our one-to-one practice as well, that sometimes that inner voice is the biggest challenge we have to face. One of the more positive sides of the last year with COVID is that more of us have been reflecting what we really want from work. And actually, recent research from Forbes says that 50% of us are really thinking about that at the moment. And so we've since gone on to develop group coaching programs for women who were thinking about career change or next steps and what that might look like. As I said, we also work with individuals on the same themes in one-to-one coaching practices for those that prefer an individual setting rather than a group. But one of our passions at She Rises is that coaching is made accessible to all. So often as a coach, you get invited into a company, an organisation, and asked to coach the very most senior people, and it's not offered to all. And so one of our passions is how to make this more accessible. That's partly through group coaching, makes it more accessible, but it's also reflected in our fee structure. And so today, we're absolutely delighted to be with you today, as we're going to cover those 3 key areas of what we do, which is coaching, confidence, and your career. And we're going to start with coaching. So at She Rises, we believe, and this is a fundamental belief of ours, is that you are the expert in your own life. You're the person that knows yourself the best. You're the only person that's ever going to have to live your life. But so often when we have to make decisions, our thinking process gets clouded by other people's advice and other people's judgment. And actually what that does is, in that moment, it disempowers us and it stops us trusting ourselves. And actually trusting yourself is really key for self-confidence. And I'm just going to share that I partly trained as a coach. My background was in HR, so I was always interested in development of people, but I partly trained as a coach because I'd reflected on how I'd shown up as a friend for a friend who was navigating a crisis in her personal life. And yes, I'd been there for her. I'd made sure her fridge was full. I'd picked up her kids. I'd been there in dark moments. But actually, in my rush to fix a situation and rescue, I'd often clouded her thinking process with my thoughts, what was right for me based on my values, rather than holding the space and helping her work out what would be right for her in her unique life. And this is where coaching can really, really benefit. And actually, by understanding how to coach, which we're going to come on to in a minute, you're going to be able to empower your friends, family, peers, colleague, clients, customers, reportees, but also yourself. And that's what we hope you take away today. And so I'm going to hand over to Gemma. We're going to look at how to coach.
Brilliant, thank you. As Nicola said about coaching skills, why do we cover these in all of our programme? But they're vital skills which are unlikely to be new to you, but that we can use and develop to empower each other and ourselves in work, in a work environment, but also in our personal relationships too. I'm just going to share my screen with you here. Hopefully everybody is seeing that now. So there are 3 core elements that provide a strong foundation for a coaching approach. The first being connection. And this involves creating an environment for great thinking to happen. So really allowing somebody to show up as themselves without judgment. As Nicola said, that belief that we are all individually the experts in our own life. It involves creating a safe space for somebody to think openly and without limits, building trust and rapport and connecting on that adult to adult way. This is really key in creating space for someone to do their best thinking, but we can also do that with ourselves too. It involves suspending judgment with ourselves. It also helps us think on a deeper level. So this is really about the environment that we create in the coaching conversation. The second is listening, such an underrated skill. And this involves just holding back and getting comfortable with those silences, which we're not really very good at, and known as an awkward silence for a reason. Really listening to someone is such a gift. And listening to that nuance that is being shared. Often in that space, the silence is where the answers are found. And we've all been there when we're sharing a story and somebody jumps in with their own advice or an experience and they've not got it quite right, and it disrupts our thinking. So the listening is key in enabling somebody to just explore on a deeper level. And the third is the power of questions. Questions allow the thinker to go deeper, to ignite their own thinking. And in general conversations, we ask questions to meet our own needs, for a bit more juicy detail, or just because we're interested in a certain thread of the content. In a coaching conversation, we ask questions to unlock the other person's thinking, to build trust and demonstrate empathy. With a question, you can help uncover limiting beliefs, those beliefs that we all have that hold us back. You can challenge perspective, and you can help identify options, which will enable that other person to move forward. So the questions we're talking about here are open questions that start with what and how, or describe, identify, tell me about such and such. They're not closed questions that invite a yes or no answer, or generally don't start with a why. And these three elements provide a strong coaching environment. And we've talked about utilising these skills on somebody else, or in a group, but they are really important skills and attributes that we can use with ourselves too, to help us create compassion inwardly and self-coach. Hopefully that all makes sense. That's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but there's just three things there to enable you to develop your coaching skills and empower each other. Nicola, back to you.
Thank you, Gemma. We're going to do a self-reflection exercise with you now. If we were in face-to-face, we'd pair you with each other so that you could develop some of these coaching tools. But we're going to share a very simple coaching tool with you. As I said, we're going to do it as a self-reflection tool. So grab a pen and paper, or electronically how you want to write things down. You can use this tool afterwards in a conversation with others as well. I'm going to ask you 4 coaching questions. I'm going to leave 30 seconds between each, so you know that, because that's your thinking time. Okay, we'll start. And I'm going to ask you, what is a challenge you're facing? That can be in your personal life or your work. Jot that down. What would you like to happen? What's the ideal outcome for you? What actions can you take to get there? And just list everything that's coming to mind. What are you going to do? And this is about your commitment and your will. Okay, thanks, Gemma, for that. One way to increase the likelihood of you taking action is by sharing it with somebody. And so we would encourage and invite you today, that action that you came with at the end of that coaching tool, to share that with somebody. If you would like to, and you don't feel too vulnerable doing it, share it in the chat. Alternatively, you're very welcome to email or send it to us on LinkedIn. Our details will be at the end of the programme. And in that, we will be your accountability buddy, and we will message you in a week's time to see how you're getting on with that. But there is something around sharing things that does increase the likelihood of us doing that. Thanks. We're now going to go on to confidence, and Gemma, over to you.
Great, thank you, Nicola. Confidence means different things to different people. I can hand on my heart say that this is the one thing that I coach almost all of my clients on. When we have it, we feel empowered, we feel strong, we feel like we can conquer the world. And when we don't, it can really hold us back from taking opportunities, putting ourselves forward, speaking up in meetings, and from taking risks. Before we get deeper into this conversation, we're just going to share a poll with you to get a sense of your confidence in the room today. So Jen's going to share this poll with you, and if you wouldn't mind just taking a quick moment to look at that. The question is, how confident do you feel in your current role on a scale of 1 to 4? 1 being not confident at all, 4 being confident all the time. So we'll just wait for a second to see your views on that. Something that helps us build confidence is sharing our experience with others. On our programs, people don't generally attend for the group sharing experience, but that power of connection and the group coaching enables people to see that it's not just me. This is the #1 piece of feedback that we get. So hence this poll here today, just to see how we're all feeling. And we've got some really great responses there. So a few confident all the time. Secondly, occasionally confident, and majority often confident in your current role, which is fantastic to see. So if you've got any advice, tips, techniques that help you feel confident, really encourage you to share those in the chat, share them with each other, and talk about the things that you use to help you build confidence. Thank you so much for that. That is fantastic to hear. Why do we talk about confidence so much on our programs? And again, I'm just going to share my screen with you here. Great. So our own experiences, childhood events, other internal negative narratives impact our confidence, as do societal norms and our brains. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time here talking about the system that we as women sit in. Research shows at an individual level, the majority of women find it difficult to self-promote in interviews, appraisals, pay negotiations, or speaking up among peers. Harvard Business Review has documented a gender gap in how men and women self-evaluate, which Nicola alluded to earlier. When assessing their own performance, women provide less favourable self-evaluations than men who perform at the exact same level, even when this has been shared and pointed out with them. Research also shows that the consequence of downplaying our abilities and achievements has led to a gender gap in job offers and progression. At the same time, over 70% of women have said that they have felt imposter-like thoughts and feelings at some point. Those thoughts and feelings of sort of getting found out or putting achievements down to luck or being in the right place at the right time sort of add to that spiral of doubting ourselves, dismissing the role that we have played within our own success. So we are not here to blame or fix women for this, but instead it's shining a light on how large scale the issue can be. Again, it helps build confidence by recognizing that it's not just me, and there are and for us to question what are the bigger forces at play here. And looking around the room when you're introducing yourselves and some of the amazing things that you will have accomplished and are accomplishing, it does beg the question, what stories have we been told, which means the majority of us feel that imposter-like feelings at some point. Our behaviour has been shaped by societal norms subconsciously. So think about upbringing or what behaviour was rewarded when we were kids. For me, that particularly was be seen and not heard. I was rewarded for being a quiet, good girl, sitting there playing quietly. And these types of stories impact how we think, feel and behave today. In our programmes, we regularly hear women associate confidence with masculinity, arrogance, cringy, showing off. And so there is a lot of reevaluating how we view confidence. These stories will naturally eke out into our own narrative, including how confident we are about talking about our achievements and our ideas. As well as society barriers, our brains can also be playing against us. But as we spend a lot of time in our heads, let's make it a nice place to be. Our inner voices can be our absolute best friend, motivating us, driving us forward, or there are times when it can be our complete enemy. Often, many of us are consumed by that inner voice that talks us down and focuses on the negative. And this is by no means an accident. Our brains are hardwired to seek out danger, looking for potential threats, and therefore always trying to keep us safe. Over thousands of years, this has become our default thinking pattern. But there are tools and techniques that we can use to harness our minds and strengthen that muscle to redirect it towards the positive and more of a growth mindset. Studies show that those that can challenge their inner critic live longer, perform better, have increased health and happiness. The National Science Foundation reported that the average person has between 12 and 60,000 thoughts every day. And of those thoughts, 80% are negative. And of that 80%, 95% play on repeat. So imagine that, just a repeating spiral of negativity. But as we said, our aim isn't to block these thoughts or turn them off. Instead, we want to harness them to create positive results. With all this happening subconsciously, we can become stuck in that spiral, particularly under times of stress or overwhelm. Creating awareness around this voice means you can begin to see patterns and notice the type of language you're using, the voice. You can then challenge that to invite inquiry and curiosity around what it is telling you. How can we change something if we're not aware of it? So we do need to work as a first step to raise awareness. And Nicola's just going to share a personal insight with us.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. And before I do that, I just want to say that some of the things that are coming through in the chat in terms of tools that you've used for confidence are exactly some of the things that we talk to on our program. So loving seeing that. Some of you are talking about feedback. Feedback can be a great awareness tool. How other we might have blind spots and how others can help us see our strengths. But also talking about sometimes being in a stretch zone. Taking risks is often where we grow confidence as well. So not always feeling comfortable where we grow. And that mindset, seeing that as a challenge rather than a fearful space. So thank you for some of you sharing those tools in there. We definitely recognise them and use them with our clients. I'm going to share a story that was about my inner voice and how it was impacting on my behaviour and how I was totally unaware of it. And this is one of the things about coaching. We can make changes, but we have to be conscious of them in order to make that change. And I was aware that I didn't particularly like standing up and talking in front of groups. And actually what the impact of that was that I often didn't take opportunities that I would have enjoyed and that I wanted to do. I was a head of HR, and I so frequently brought in people to deliver the learning and development initiatives that I would really like to do. But there was a fear there. And it wasn't until I was being trained as a coach, and you're then coached a lot yourself, that I realized that this came from a childhood experience where I had been asked to come to the front of the classroom and read a word off the board that I couldn't say. And so other children laughed, and otherwise I was called stupid and thick. And what I realized, totally I hadn't realized, it was unconscious, was that it was still impacting on my behavior as an adult. Once I became conscious of that and could really examine that fear in the rational, that if I stand up in front of somebody, they're going to think I'm inarticulate and look stupid, I was able to say, okay, as a 40-year-old woman, what's all this other life experience? I'm no longer that child. And you start to examine those beliefs in the real rational, and then you can change your behavior as a result of them, because you realize that that's not still you and how that's holding you back. And so certainly something, and there was no way I would have done this today a few years ago before I'd uncovered some of those limiting beliefs that were in my inner voice holding me back. Thanks, Gemma.
Oh, thank you. That really does help bring it to life, the impact that that inner voice can have. We're going to ask you now to reflect on your own inner voice, and you've adhered to some of those comments in the chat already, so thank you for that. This is a private reflection exercise, again, to help bring awareness to your inner voice, what it says to you and how it may be affecting your confidence, and maybe it's it's confidence at certain times or in certain situations. So grab a pen and paper again, and I'm just going to spend again another 30 seconds on each of these thoughts here. So I'd like you to identify a situation, could be a work situation or personal situation, where your inner voice is currently speaking negative to you. And I would like you to describe how that inner voice is making you feel. And note down what exactly are the things that it is saying to you. And describe in what ways does this affect your confidence. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of food for thought there. I'm conscious we are moving through this quite quickly, so we can certainly share these questions with you afterwards if that's of use. Taking that situation as an example, we're going to then look at another set of questions, and this time we're going to use a tool called distance self-talk or psychological distancing, whereby you actively detach yourself from your thoughts and look at the situation more objectively with fresh eyes. Often when we get stuck in that spiral of negative self-talk, we become so attached and involved in our thoughts, and it means we find it hard to disconnect and think objectively. So this technique invites you to talk to yourself or coach yourself in the third person. So using your own first name, so address yourself using your own first name, and it just creates this bit of distance between you and the situation. So you may have not noticed or not recognised, but you may already do this when under times of particular stress or panic. I do this a lot, and when it was highlighted to me that this is something that we use as a tool subconsciously, I'm now noticing it all the time. But when I'm sort of rushing around, or I often say to myself, Gemma, for goodness sake, you can do this, or Gemma, pull yourself together. But this distant self-talk technique invites a bit of compassion, so not sort of berating myself in those situations, but remembering those coaching skills that we talked earlier, so suspending judgment and staying open and just allowing a more kind approach, a more positive narrative, a more truthful narrative to come through. So again, keep in mind the situation that you just described, and then move through these questions using your first name, addressing yourself with your first name. So the first one I want you to think about is, where is the evidence? What information is missing? How true are these things that your inner narrative tells you? In what ways could you be more compassionate towards yourself? Using that thought around talking to yourself the way you would a friend. And how will you ensure you continue to be aware of this inner narrative over the next few weeks? And if anybody cares to share any reflections, having just quickly gone through that process, we'd love you to share those in the chat. Has that helped you get some distance? What stands out for you?
Gemma and I, like Mo Gawdat, who used to be the Chief Business Officer at Google, calls his inner negative voice Becky. It creates this distance between himself and those negative inner chatter that he hears. And these thoughts that happen, they are a biological product of our brain. They're not us. So how do you create that distance to be able to see that that's not direct? You are not your thoughts.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank
Nicola,
you.
I think we're moving on to
we
the
are
career
conscious
section.
of time. Yeah, just quickly, somebody's just put a question around, we're mainly going to come to questions after, but just there was a little question about anxiety in particular situations. One of these things that Gemma's just gone through is really about what's the story you're telling yourself. So think about the story that you're telling yourself, what information is missing, where does that come from, how true and helpful it is for you, but also practical. You know, lots of it, can you control your environment? What enables you to feel confident? Where is it, you know, how is it about breath that can also bring you into the now, rather than worrying about the past or ruminating over the past or worrying about the future, but also potentially thinking this is a moment in time, this is temporary, it's not going to last. So, but think what's worked for you in the past. It'll be different for different people. So thank you, Gemma. Just coming on to the career bits, as I'm conscious time is running away with us. At She Rises, we believe work matters. It's about work it's partly about a route to gender equality as well, but all the research and the data shows that if you're satisfied at work, your well-being is increased, your health is increased, and you're more likely to thrive. So it's a question, what do you want from work, that we think is worth spending some time really thinking about. Now, career means different things to different people. And we'd encourage you after this just to have a think about, what does career mean to you? I quite like, there's a definition by a career theorist that talks about it's an evolving sequence of a person's work experience over time. And actually what you want from a career or a job does change over time. There's a whole big body of academic work and research and career theories that really demonstrate that, and a lot of them are linked to where we are in our life. I'm just going to very quickly just highlight a couple of them for you, just to help you think about what you want from work. One really talks to where we are in our life and saying that we've got three main drivers, what we want from our work. One is around challenge, in terms of I want to be challenged, I want to learn, I want to progress, but I want promotion and on to the next stage. One is around balance. How do I get to balance my work with my life? And the third one is authenticity. How do I get to be myself at work? Now, those three things are always really important to us, but one of those will be a different priority at different stages in our life. And unsurprising, balance often coincides with when we have families. There's another well-researched career theory that talks about being most fulfilled at work when we can be ourselves or the person we want to be. So it's linked to identity as well. And the body of positive psychology career theories have kind of taken that a step further and says that we are most satisfied, most fulfilled in our work if, number one, we can use our strengths. And by strengths, I mean technical, but also character strengths. The second thing is doing things we enjoy. Now, that's different to, research shows that's different to fun, but getting a sense of enjoyment from your work. And the third thing is about, are our values present? And our values are things that are important to us. Now, our strengths and what we enjoy may change over time, but actually our values are fairly consistent over our lives and are tend to be much longer term in nature. So understanding what you want from your work, but also your motivation for change, will help you make the right move next. Now, we find that working with our coaching clients, either in a group or individual setting, it can really often feel overwhelming, that question, what next? And so often many people get stuck at that point and sometimes don't take any action because of that feeling of stuckness. And we tend to work with clients at 3 different points. The first is, and again, you can use this for yourself, the first is, where are you now? And that's really taking stock of all your experiences, all your achievements, your successes, your skills. What have you enjoyed? So really, really looking into that about where are you now? The second point that we work with clients is, well, where is it you want to go? And that's more around your visioning. And that's really thinking about your values in that, but also potentially your purpose. What is your motivation for change? What is it you really want from your next role? And that's sinking into your imagination. It's the generation of ideas stage that we work with people. Who is it that you might envy in their work? What does that tell you? All of those things is about, where do you want to go? And the third bit is much more practical and action. Well, how are you going to get there? Using your networks, leveraging your networks will be part of that. And actually, data and research shows that we're much more likely to find out about a job opportunity through our informal networks than our formal networks of close friends and family. So think about your network and how that can support you. How are you going to get there? Also, for some clients, that's around working with confidence issues and sometimes some interview prep that we do with people as well. So we're going to go into a self-reflection exercise again here. And I want you to imagine that you are standing on a line that represents your career. We're standing, the one end of the line is where you are today, the here and now. The other end of the line is wherever you want it to be. I want you to look back down that line throughout your career and just think about all that you have achieved. And what I would like to invite you to do is identify one key positive moment where you felt really fulfilled. This could be a particular moment, a piece of work, a client, a project, an event. It's entirely up to you. But notice what's coming up for you. So again, grab a pen and paper. We're going to do 4 questions that's going to talk you through this. So, and you won't be asked to share this. This is just for you. So what was the situation? What was that key moment? What were the obstacles that you overcame? What actions did you take and what skills did you use? What was the result, the outcome or impact that you created? Okay, thanks, Gemma. If you stop sharing, that'd be great. What you've just identified there is one of your success stories. And we do this in our programs to help people who find it difficult in self-promotion situations, as Gemma was taught, because what we do is we normalize the sharing of those successes. The structure we just took you through is also an interview prep tool. So if you've got an interview coming up soon, go back to those questions. That can help you prepare. I want you now, we'll continue with a bit of self-reflection, but I want you to imagine that you're walking back up your career line from that key moment you've just identified to today, in the here and now. And I want you to look forward. What do you see? What options do you have? And scribble anything down. There's data in those very first thoughts that you have. We all have lots of different jobs and careers inside of us, but we're encouraged to specialize, often really young, through the choices that we make in school or beyond. But there are other paths inside of you, and some of them may be worth exploring. And so I want to stay with this generation of ideas, and I'm going to finish this section with a question, which is, if you could not fail, what would you do? And thank you, everyone, for going through that. And if you've got any reflections, please do pop in the chat for us. I just want to say that research from Google, actually, over a 10-year period, looked at what made an effective manager. And having conversations about long-term careers was part of that. And that was so, how do you craft and create the skills in your current role that's going to help you for the future possibilities and options? So I would encourage you to have conversations with your manager about that. But also, if you're a manager, have a conversation with your reportees about that as well. Great. Thank you for that. Gemma, come back in. We're coming towards the end of our session. Have a look at some questions, and we will sign out soon, because I'm conscious we've got 8 minutes left.
Yep, no, we will be rapid on this one, but I just want to say I'm loving the chat coming through, some really helpful tips that you're sharing there. So that is brilliant to see. The question we've just got one question, is how do you become more conscious of a negative inner voice, from Beth? So thank you, Beth, for that. I mean, my view on this is awareness is the first tool of becoming more conscious of it. And going through that exercise that we did to start with around journaling, or just writing down what your inner voice is saying to you, becoming more familiar with the situations when it shows up, what are the themes, and just even keeping that set of questions that we shared to hand, so that you can just spend a little bit of time reflecting on that. And I guarantee, even after this session, you may start to be more aware of it already, to be more conscious of it. But with these things, we do say the consistency and practice. It is a practice. Going to one program or doing a workshop like this once is not going to change your life. Well, I shouldn't say that, should I? We hope it changes your life, but it is the practice that's really important. Nicola, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
I would totally agree. Noticing is the first step. That's where you bring things into the awareness. So noticing when that negative voice arises. What are the triggers for it? What's a story you're telling yourself? And that story can been there for a long time. So ask yourself about, where does it come from? And that often goes back into back in time of where that's come from. It may be a label or a belief that we were given by others. How true is it now? And how helpful is it? We can change our beliefs. They're hardwired neurologically into us. We can change them, but as Gemma says, it's practicing. And so what after you've noticed and you recognize them, and you recognize when you have those thoughts, when they're not helpful to you, it's about creating a new narrative. It's about creating a new narrative that's based on what's the truth for you now, but also one that becomes positive. And then the more you can think about that positive belief, it starts to physically change the neurological pathways in your brain. So reframing a belief. So from one that says, I'm terrible at working alone, to one, I work better collaboratively with others. Again, as Gemma said, the brain naturally looks through a negative lens. So how can we pick up a different one, look at it from a different perspective, to help us change some of those?
And Beth, you're right. Sometimes they've been there a long, long time, like Nicola said, from childhood, or labels that we were given when we were very young. So it takes a little bit of time, but you can do it. Thank you all so much for showing up so generously. I've really enjoyed this session, really enjoyed this discussion. I always do, talking around this topic, and really appreciate you being here and joining us today. We encourage you to discuss reflections with a colleague, or share a nugget of information or a resource that you've heard today. Saying and sharing our thoughts out loud does help us process the information, provide support for each other, and accountability. Before, I've just got one more slide, which I'll share our contact details with you so you can stay in touch. So share any thoughts or reflections. We'd love to hear from you. But I'd like you just to share in the chat what has been the one most helpful thing that you're taking away from today. The one nugget that stands out for you. And while you're doing that, I'll just share our details here with you. This is where you can contact us on a website, which we've shared a couple of links already in the chat there, our email, or on LinkedIn. And we've got 2 upcoming programs that we are sharing here first. So one is the Rising with Confidence program, as we mentioned, that starts on the 1st of July. And the Rising Through Career Change, which starts on the 5th of July. And we're giving you sort of first viewing of those. If you want to get in there first, we'd love to see you there. We've touched on some of the themes today, but we go into a lot more depth in the sessions. So so be kinder to ourselves, Beth. Absolutely, I could not agree more on that one. I hope you found this really useful. We've really enjoyed being here today. Nicola, did you want to add anything as a final goodbye?
No, I was just going to say thank you, everybody, for your engagement. Follow us on and connect with us on LinkedIn. And I hope some of you have watched this session from the garden, because we're starting to melt. But thanks ever so much, everybody, today. I wish we were in person and I could have met you, and perhaps next time. Take care.
Great. Thank you so much, Gemma and Nicola, for a really good session. We've had some really engaging insights through the chat, and appreciate your time. For anybody that's free tomorrow, we still have 2 more sessions available to wrap up CWT Live this year. So we look forward to seeing some of you again. And with that, I'd like to wish you a good afternoon, and we'll connect again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Jen.